Hello everybody, and welcome to a Vintage Cube cardless change grading video. A little bit different from the normal gameplay that we do, but a lot of people expressed some interest, so we're going to go through all of the changes. I think there's over 100, and grade them all, A to F. Um, I know in some public schools these days it feels like A is just the standard, but that's not the case here. No grade inflation. C means I think it's neutral for the cube, that I don't think it really changes the experience. And then obviously A is great upgrades, F is cards where I really think they missed. Overall, there's more A's than F's. I think that they did a pretty good job. And at the end, I'll go through my 5 favorite changes and my 3 least favorite changes. One other general design philosophy that I want to mention is that they took into account like the gameplay experience a little bit over power level. So, for example, there's some cards like Bribery, the 3 mana Ashiok, some like adventure cards like White Plume Adventurer that they decided to cut. Ashiok got cut last time actually, but that are not in the format, even though they would be on power level because they wanted to make games just more fun, basically, according to them. I understand that. I kind of still think it should just be like the most powerful cards. It feels like that's kind of the ethos of Vintage Cube, but I do understand it. So I'm not gonna really comment on that too much. Well, I'll comment on it, I guess, but I'm not gonna like give it an F because you're downgrading the power level, given that consideration. So without further ado, we'll jump in. First, we have cutting Guardian of Girapur, which is basically like a worse Flicker Wisp for Weathered Wayfarer. I'll give this a B. I don't think Guardian of Girapur was very good. There were some times where you would play it in some white decks, but you were never thrilled. It was more of a introduced some interesting gameplay. First of all, it gives you recurve and white aggressive decks, also pretty good. And then third, it has a lot of utility outside of mono white. Like you can play this in some sort of like Bant Field of the Dead deck with Knight of the Reliquary and Elvish Reclaimer to give you redundancy. Um, cool card. Also, just a little tip for this card: you can crack a fetch land and then in response activate the ability to get some value out of it when you're on the play without skipping your land drop. So solid upgrade there. Next, we cut Loyal Retainers, which is a bad reanimation card for Karmic Guide, which is another bad reanimation card. I'll give this like a C plus. I think they're both basically unplayable. Karmic Guide is probably slightly better, but there's not really decks that want to play this. Like Reanimator decks aren't looking for a 5 mana Reanimator spell. White decks aren't looking for a 5 mana card that doesn't like push damage immediately. So neither card's very good. But yeah, C plus, slight upgrade. White Plume Adventurer for Steel Seraph. This is a massive decrease in power level. This card is like maybe the best white 3-drop, one of the better white cards in the whole format, and this card is pretty bad. So I'm gonna give it a D. I think that this is a fine exchange, but like I don't think white is overpowered. I don't think it needs the nerf necessarily. I also think that the initiative is a cool mechanic. Like the Monarch, it can snowball in some games, but it incentivizes players to play creatures and attack and play to the board, which is good. I think that's nice to have something other than just like degenerate combo decks. This card is just bad. Like it's a sideboard card in some matchups. You can play it if you're short on playables, but it's just not very strong. Next, Arena Rector, cut for Sun Titan. I'm going to give this one another C. Neither card is really playable. Maybe a C minus. Like, Arena Rector is very cool. Like, I had 1 or 2 good moments with it last time where I'd, like, get Ugin or Elspeth out into play pretty quick. Sun Titan is just pretty much unplayable in every deck. I get that they want to complete the cycle of Titans, which is fine, but I actually like Arena Rector, so slight downgrade, C minus, but nothing crazy. Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle for Sarah Paragon. This I'll give a B, maybe even B plus. This card's not that good, but it's okay. It's good with fetch lands or bobble. It can kind of snowball value, whereas this card is just unplayable. You just need so much to go right for this to be good. Like if it returns something at the beginning of your upkeep, maybe it could be good, but like you just need so much to go right, and it's not even that big of a payoff. Next, Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, got the axe for Guardian Scale Lord. I'll give this one, I guess, a B. I don't think Elish Norn is playable in almost any deck, and Guardian Scale Lord is also pretty bad, but it could be okay in some like blue-white mid-range decks that have like just like a lot of cheap permanents, but it's really pretty underwhelming. So yeah, a B. Then Mana Tithe for Reprieve. This is a weird one. I love the addition of Reprieve. It's great in white aggressive decks. It's great in blue-white control, but I also love Mana Tithe. So I'm gonna give this one a B, but it could have easily been an A if they'd kept in Manitai, then like put in Reprieve over Tishar or something. That would have been an A. Genuinely great addition. And then White actually has somewhat of a counterspell Ethos with two copies of this effect. But since they cut Manitai, I'm gonna give it a B. It is still an upgrade, but I think not only is Manitai the good card that I wish was still in the format, it makes it more interesting, not less, to have White have two counterspells. So solid point. And I guess in general, I should note that every single change is a two-part decision: what to add and what to cut. So this is a case where they nailed it on what to add, but they kind of missed on what to cut, in my opinion. Next, Ravagers of War for Savine's Reclamation. This is kind of interesting. Ravagers of War is a card that is often very bad and then sometimes just wins the game. It's a little bit swingy, not super fun to play against, and then Savine's Reclamation is kind of bad, but not that bad. I'm gonna give this one like a C plus, I guess. I know that they said they didn't want to have two Armageddons and tempt players into thinking that this was like a good archetype to just play two Armageddons, and it's not. So in that sense, it's a good change. This card is kind of interesting. It's not really at home in aggressive or control decks, but I could imagine some sort of like mid-range Jeskai deck where you're bringing back like Teferi and Dak Faden, and it's pretty sweet. So solid addition. Next, Seal from Existence for Leyline Binding. I love this change. I'll give it an A minus. Seal from Existence is pretty bad. It's not a card that mono white decks are really thrilled to play. It's okay in blue white control, but the mana cost can be a little tricky there. And Leyline Binding is just way more interesting. It's at its best, it's extremely powerful. It also incentivizes the fetch land trio mana base, which I already like. And then it just is like much better. Having flash gives you ways to interact with combo decks. It takes out, you know, sneak attack things and Splinter Twin. Just like a really good card that just fits well in this format. Last white change. Temporary Lockdown is cut for Touch the Spirit Realm. I'll give this one a B. I like Temporary Lockdown in a few situations. Just like sweeping up a bunch of like artifacts from your Battlesphere and their signets was pretty nice. But Touch the Spirit Realm was cool. Ephemerate is a little bit narrow. I'm okay with it being in the format, but I wouldn't want to have like two of that effect unless it's versatile. So having this to be able to like kind of enable like grief plus ephemerate, while also just being a reasonable card to cast is a cool addition. And it's also instant speed interaction for the twin combo, so I think it's cool. I like this change a little bit. Moving on to the blue cards, we cut Thassa's Oracle for Fairy Mastermind. I'll give this one a B plus. I like this change a lot. Thassa's Oracle is very narrow. Granted, I didn't play the kind of decks that want Thassa's Oracle as much as some, so I can imagine some people missing it, but I think this is a good change. Fairy Mastermind is cool. It gives you stuff to do with your mana. It means both players have interesting decisions. Like another flash threat's always nice. So yeah, solid upgrade. Next, Glen Alundra got cut for Subtlety. I like having Subtlety in the format. It's a good card and it helps to fight the degenerate decks. Also gives blue like more ways to deal with creatures. Now with Subtlety, mono blue becomes a little bit more of a reasonable option. That being said, I did like Glenn. I know people say it's like a little slow for 2023 and is kind of slow, but it's a very, very powerful card, especially against combo decks. And I think it was like maybe a little underrated at the end of its time in Vintage Cube. So this one I'll give a B minus. I think it's a slight upgrade, but again, I kind of wish they had like maybe put Subtlety in for well, yeah. Getting to the next one, I think this card sucks. So Subtlety could have replaced Mold Drifter, and that would have been fine. So slight upgrade, but I will miss Glenn. Next, cutting Mold Drifter for Chrome Host Seed Shark. I'm gonna give that a D. I think this card is pretty bad. I've played against it several times and never been impressed. I haven't played with it yet. It's really good if you like tap out for it, then they try to kill it, and you play Force of Will, untap, make your thing into a 5/5 and swing. It's also good if you have like a bunch of Moxen in your player and academy deck, but it's the kind of card that really like a lot needs to go right for this to be good, and I just don't think it's that good. And I do actually think Moldrifter was good. Once again, these are both cards that used to be rated very highly, and then over time people got lower on. Fair enough. It's not great, but I think it's a solid playable card, and I like the synergies with like Restoration Angel. Maybe I'm just a sucker for like blue white blink, but I think this is a cool card, so I'm sad about this change. And I wish they had just left in Glen and then like maybe put in Subtlety. All right, Rift and Cloudskate for Odawara. This one, on the other hand, I'm totally with. This card I think has been just basically unplayable for a very long time. In the same sort of blue white tempo decks, it's like okay as your 20-second spell, but not that good. And Odawar is genuinely great. I love having the flexibility of a land that can also do things. It can save your things from removal. It can break up their combos. Really good addition here. I'll give this one an A minus. Consecrated Sphinx for Torrential Gearhulk, C minus. I think they're both pretty bad, but Torrential Gearhulk is pretty much unplayable. I think it can be okay if you have like Factor Fiction and like Ancestral Recall and Mystic Confluence and Dig Through Time. Like you can build decks where it's good, but you need so many good instants, and even then it's 6 mana. Like I just think this is not that good. And Consecrated Sphinx is like expensive and clunky, but it's good if you ramp into it. Like I'll miss the games of going like mana drain your 3 drop into turn three Consecrated Sphinx. It's a fine exchange, but I like Sphinx a little bit more. Then Agent of Treachery for Hullbreaker Horror. I'm just gonna give this a nice round C. I think they're both unplayable in the main deck. Agent of Treachery is better, or like they're both okay as reanimation targets, but not great. And I guess the advantage of this is that it's good in like a control mirror, whereas Agent of Treachery is not that good there. So maybe it deserves a C plus, but both are pretty bad. Not a change that I'm thinking about too much. Next, Arcane Proxy for Murktide Regent. Good change, B plus. Um, Arcane Proxy was pretty bad. It's another card that can be good in very special circumstances where you have like Time Walk and Ancestral Recall and lots of stuff like that. But it's still not that good. It's just way worse than Snapcaster Mage. It also doesn't need to say if you cast it. This I one game I thought you could tinker this into play and then flashback your tinker and get something else, and that would be kind of cool. But that doesn't even work. Same with Reanimator. If you could like reanimate it, flashback your reanimate something else, then I think this would be kind of interesting in combo decks. But because it has the text that says if you cast it, it's not good in combo. It's just too underpowered to be good in control. So not that good of a card. And Murktide's really cool. It's not always going to be good, but when it is good, it's so sweet. You just go like turn one, Dragon's Rage Chandler. Turn two, like Consider, Thought Scour, or like Preordain. Turn three, like Murktide, Spell Pierce. Like that's just very satisfying. So staple in Modern, kind of staple in Legacy. Just a card that deserves to be in this format. And Palinchron for Frost Titan, C plus. Not because I like Palinchron deserved to go. This card sucks. It was very niche. It was only good if you had like High Tide plus 6 islands and they didn't have anything, and you had to pay off. Like there's just so much had to go right for this. And Frost Titan also sucks. It's okay as a reanimation target. Like if you put it into play on turn two, it can close out the game. And it does let blue play to the board a bit better, but it's like 6 mana for this. Not really where you want to be. Next, Chain of Vapor is cut for Snap. I'll give this one a B minus. I think it's a slight upgrade. Um, they both do pretty similar things, but I like that the Snap it just has a little bit more interesting play with the untapping your land. You can use it to save your thing for free. It is good with High Tide, kind of. Yeah, solid addition, but nothing crazy. Next, Ancestral Vision for Hard Evidence. This is a kind of funny one. I guess I'll give it a C plus. They're both 1 mana and blue, but this one they're like very different. Ancestral Vision plays with like Arcane Proxy and stuff like that. Hard Evidence is just a solid card. It lets blue not fall behind on board. Once again, it gives mono blue a little bit more of a chance against creature decks, so maybe it deserves a B minus. It's a decent upgrade, but Ancestral Vision on turn one was really sweet, and I will miss that a bit. Next, Brain Geyser got the axe for Blue Sun Zenith. Solid upgrade. I'll give it a B, maybe even B plus. The cards are similar, but Blue Sun Zenith is a little bit more interesting in control decks, being instant speed, and the shuffling in effect is cool. I like Blue Suns yourself, later Blue Suns yourself again, later Blue Suns them for 10 and win the game. I got a trophy with a pretty sweet blue green deck that was like had a bunch of draw sevens and a bunch of ramp, and then Blue Sun Zenith and Endurance. And the theory was you just like draw and put tons of lands into play, and then eventually shuffle your graveyard in and mill them out. And like that's a cool thing to be able to do. Next, Bribery for Flash. I don't even know. I'm not even gonna grade this one honestly. I'll just give it a C, I guess. It's like this card is way better in almost every circumstance. This card is kind of fun and really good in very specific circumstances. I played this on turn two with Woodfall Primus once, and that was pretty sweet. But this is not a power level consideration. This is just like a fun consideration. People think the bribery is not fun to play against. Fair enough. Um, yeah, I liked bribery. I'm gonna give it a C, but this change a C. But I can see arguments for it being a good change or a bad change, depending on what you prioritize. On to black cards, Blood Artist for Orcish Bowmasters. This is great, slam dunk, A plus. I think yeah, A plus, A or A plus. Blood Artist was pretty much unplayable in every deck. Um, just like not enough support, and even if there was support, it's too underpowered. Orcish Bowmasters is great, powerful main deck card, also a hate card against Storm and Grizzlebrand and stuff like that. Fun to play with like flash and timing it with their cantrips, just like a really powerful and well designed card. My only knock on it is that it is like kind of oppressively good against some decks, like mono white and mono green are just gonna die to this a lot. But then it's kind of cool that it's like good against mono white and mono green, which are the two decks that don't draw cards. It's also good against blue decks that do draw cards. Like it's yeah, it's very powerful. It maybe is almost like it's not too powerful for Vintage Cube, but really good card, good upgrade. Next, Bloodghast for Tenacious Underdog. Another good change. I'm not quite as high on this because I think Bloodghast was a bit better than Blood Artist, and Tenacious Underdog is a bit worse than Orcish Bowmasters. But I'll give this an A minus, maybe B plus. Tenacious Underdog is just very powerful. The card draw really impresses me. Although I still think it's funny that it's an underdog just looking at this guy. He does not look like he's normally the underdog in fights. This dude's seen some things and he's won some fights, but I guess he's an underdog and he's definitely tenacious and he's a good upgrade. So B plus. Mesmeric Fiend for Kitesail Freebooter. B minus. It's an upgrade, I guess. They're very similar cards. Mesmeric Fiend is like better in sacrifice decks where you can sack it in response to the trigger, and they cut some of the sacrifice themes. So I understand why they made this change. But Kitesail Freebooter is not that much better. The big downside of this card is that it can't take creatures. I think that's fine though. Black already has lots of ways to deal with creatures, and it's a better creature. Also, it plays better with Fallen Shinobi, so slight upgrade. Next, Midnight Reaper for Gix. I'm gonna give this a B. No, I'll give this just a C. I guess they're both pretty similar. They are both mediocre value 3 drops for black creature decks. Um, Midnight Reaper is better against removal. Gix is better against like Storm. Um, so it just depends on what you're playing against. But yeah, I mean, I guess the activated ability is kind of fun. Like maybe that will come up sometime. Maybe it just makes this a C plus, but pretty neutral change. Next, Rotting Regisaur from Misery's Shadow. I'll give this another C plus. I think it's a solid upgrade. Rotting Regisaur was cool. Turn one Dark Ritual into Rotting Regisaur was tempting, but it feel like it never actually won. Um, and it's also a pretty bad enabler for Reanimator decks. It's sort of in that awkward spot where it's like mediocre in Reanimator, mediocre in aggro, not really ever that good. Like you sometimes play it because you have to, but that's not really the kind of card you want. Misery Shadow is kind of similar, honestly, but it does have some extra. Like it's I would say it's a little bit better in like a black red aggro deck, and exiling their creatures thing is kind of interesting. So slight upgrade, but both cards are kind of mediocre. Then Woe Strider for Evolved Sleeper. This is a good change. I'll give this a B. Woe Strider was pretty bad. It does give you some inevitability in black decks. I like having like I just like the escape mechanic in general. It incentivizes you for doing stuff. But Evolved Sleeper is cheaper. It's also a mana sink. Um, Solid upgrade. I like keeping the curve down in like black red aggro. Next, Braid's Cabal Minion for Rankle, Master of Pranks. I'll give this one a B plus. Rankle's sweet. I think it's not super powerful, but it's very fun. Presents you with a lot of decisions, and is also a pretty good card, honestly. Braid's not so good. Like it's iconic. The one game where you have like turn one land Black Lotus. I don't even know. This card's bad. Yeah, good change. Next, Ravenous Chupacabra for Noxious Gearhulk. I'm gonna give this one a C minus. Actually, I think it's fine. The cards do similar things. Chupacabra is not that exciting of a body, and Noxious Gearhulk is much better. But it's also like again stuck in this weird in between where 4 mana to kill a creature and add to the board is okay. Like that will stabilize against aggressive decks. 6 mana is just too much for this. Like 6 mana for a kill spell is really expensive, and it's also not really impactful enough to be a good reanimator target. So it's kind of in the unfortunate in between. Um, Still reasonable. It's like a good sideboard card against green decks maybe, but C minus. Next, Shriekmaw for Soul Transfer. I'm gonna give this one another C minus. Soul Transfer is bad, I think. So you have to having an artifact and an enchantment to get both is rarely going to happen. If you specifically build around it, maybe, but um, I think that's kind of a trap. It's kind of fun to have as a aspirational goal to work towards, but even then the payoff isn't that high. 3 mana to sorcery, exile a creature or planeswalker is pretty underpowered. I like Shriekmaw a lot more. The flexibility is nice. The like blink synergies are cool. Um, yeah, I think they kind of missed on this one. We'll see, but I like the Shriekmaw. I do get that the non-black, non-artifact restriction is annoying, but I still think I would rather have Shriekmaw in the format. Next, Goryo's Vengeance for Corpse Dance. Another one I'm gonna give a C minus, maybe even a D plus. I found Goryo's Vengeance to be phenomenally good. From reading what other people thought, that I don't know if others had as much success with it, but I got like 5 trophies with Goryo's Vengeance. Having like Atraxa, Grizzlebrand, in addition to Emrakul and whatnot, is just sweet. The 1 mana cheaper is a big difference. Yeah, I think this. I wish they still had Goryo's Vengeance. I think there's an argument for having like having 3 of the Shallow Grave Goryo Corpse Dance effect to really give redundancy to Emrakul Reanimator. But yeah, I do prefer Goryo's Vengeance. This is a little bit like, yeah, it works with Archon of Cruelty and like a Sundering Titan. There's obviously situations where this is better, but Goryo's Vengeance both like I think is more powerful and is also just like cool. Like, oh yeah, I have a legendary creature that I'm bringing back. Like, I don't know, I like this card. Next, Hero's Downfall for Baleful Mastery. Interesting exchange. I guess I'll give it a C plus. In terms of power level, it's hard to say. I mean, they do very similar things. The exile is relevant, but I think this is more interesting. Any card that presents multiple options is generally going to be more fun to play with, in my opinion. So slight upgrade, like nothing significant, ooh, but yeah, solid upgrade. Next, Makeshift Mannequin for Life Death. This is a good change. I'm gonna give this a B, maybe even B plus. Makeshift Mannequin was just too expensive. 4 mana for this effect is so much, and another 2 mana reanimation spell is cool. It just gives more redundancy. The life side isn't that relevant, but I did see someone that played life and then played Gaia's Cradle and just went off, and so that is like a little bit like I think just death would still be an upgrade in this slot, but then given that you have the life side too, it's kind of cool. Then Cabal Therapy for Concealing Curtains. I guess I'll give this a C plus. I don't think Concealing Curtains is very good. It could be okay in some sort of blue black control deck, um, but Cabal Therapy also wasn't very good, so slight upgrade. But don't play this card unless you like need to. Basically, sideboarded it in against Ragavan decks, but it's not great. I think. Next, a little bit of a massacre change. The Meathook Massacre cut for Massacre Worm. I'll give this one a C plus, B minus. It's like the Meathook Massacre is a good board sweeper in blue black control. This isn't really playable in blue black control, but it's just a pretty epic card. The swings that this card generates are really cool. It's okay in Reanimator. You can also just like Dark Ritual and a Massacre Worm and sweep all their mana dorks against green. Like okay, upgrade. Maybe C plus, not B minus, but like an upgrade. Next, Phyrexian Tower for Urborg, or the Dead Marshes. Definitely an upgrade. Phyrexian Tower was pretty much unplayable. Urborg is not that amazing, but it's okay. I like that it plays with like you can make your Dark Depths tap for black or something. Um, yeah, just like a okay upgrade, a B. Urborg is not like a high pick, but in the right deck it has some value. Moving on to red. Bloodfeather Phoenix for Dragon's Rage Chandler. Love this exchange. A. Not A plus, but like A. Um, this card's great. It's powerful. It's fun. It's interesting. Goes into a lot of decks. This card is just bad. It's like a curve filler in a red deck if you don't have enough 2 drops. So both the card they added and the card they cut work really well for this exchange. This is one of my favorite cards to play with, honestly. Not because it's so good, but it's just like cool. Presents you with lots of decisions. Encourages you to build your deck in a fun way with lots of like cheap cantrips and stuff. So great exchange. Next, Eidolon of the Great Revel got the X for Kumano faces Kakazan. That's a kind of weird one. I think Kumano is a cool card. I like it as a 1 drop. It can essentially be like it can be better than a 2/1 for 1 mana if you build around it well. So solid card. I don't know why they cut Eidolon though. Like Eidolon was a very good card, and it was like good hate against Storm, and just makes games interesting where you're like, which spells can I play? Um, So yeah, I think this card should probably still be in the format. It also is just like a the kind of card that you want in Vintage Cube, in my opinion. Like it feels epic and intense and powerful, but like also scary. So I wish they kept this in. I guess I'll give this a C because I like the addition of this, but I wish this was still there. Next, Avalanche Riders for Rampaging Raptor. Avalanche Riders looks terrible and often overperformed for me. Um, with that being said, Rampaging Raptor is certainly an upgrade, so I'll give this a B minus. Um, it is just a much more powerful card, good mana sink. It's the red questing beast. Um, just a good card. I underrated this for a little bit. I had a blue red deck where this was in my sideboard, and I ended up siding it in almost every matchup, and it was almost always good. Next, we have Rekindling Phoenix, cut for Pia and Kieran Lar. Solid upgrade. I guess I'll give it a B. Rekindling Phoenix is just pretty bad. It's like okay in a mono red mirror as a curve topper, but Pia's probably still better there. And then this is just like a more interesting card. It lets you like sacrifice your one ring if it gets too many counters. It just is more interesting and more powerful. So solid upgrade. Next, Greater Gargadon for Italy Primal Conqueror. Another B, good upgrade. Gargadon is bad, like quite bad. There's like it's easy to dream of like, oh, turn one, suspend Greater Gargadon, turn two, balance, make them sack their lands. Like, I don't know, it's just not that good. And Natalia is good. It's like a good reanimation target, and it is okay in like a red green deck too. It's just like a ramp target. It's a little narrow, but it's a cool card. Next, Chandra Acolyte of Flame got the axe for Nahiri's Warcrafting. I love Nahiri's Warcrafting. It gives red a way to deal with big creatures and planeswalkers, like Shieldred. Um, and it also gives like card selection and card advantage. It's not that good in mono red, but it's very good in like red white mid range or blue red control, and it's okay in mono red. Chandra's fine. I like that it can flashback time walk and stuff like that. So it's good in like blue red if you have broken cards, but it's not that good in mono red. And so I guess I'll give this a B minus. It's somewhat of an upgrade. Next, red elemental blast for rabbit battery. I'm gonna give this one a D plus or C minus maybe. I like rabbit battery. It's fine. Actually, it's pretty good. Like giving all your creatures haste is nice. But I like red elemental blast a lot. It's the sort of card that feels like it should be in this format. I still think blue is the best color. Giving like getting the red elemental blast your opponent's mana drain is just like really cool, and gives a type of counterplay. Like this is just like another good, cheap, hasty creature. There's a lot of these. This is a little bit more of a unique effect. So, I I'm sad about this. I'm not sad that Rabbit Battery's in the format, but I think we should leave in Red Elemental Blast. Next, Perforce's Intervention for Mind Collapse. Um, I don't know why the picture's not coming up. That's weird. Is it worth clicking on all these? Nah. Well, okay. Perfect. Yeah, this is not that significant of a change. This was pretty much unplayable. It just like is an inefficient removal spell or an inefficient burn spell to the face. Doesn't add board presence. Mind Collapse is more powerful. Well, like the free spell thing makes it a little bit more interesting. I wish that you could do this on your opponent's turn too, but it's only on yours. Um, Fine change B. Not like this is not like a high pick though. Next, Past in Flames from Mizzix's Mastery. I'll give this one a C plus. I think they're both pretty much unplayable. But this has like a little bit more interesting play with like Magma Opus maybe. Um, Still, both cards are bad. Embercleave for Goldspan Dragon. I'm gonna give this one a C minus. Some people just love this card. I know Caleb Gannon loves it. I get it if you just think it's cool art or whatever, but it's not good. Like mono red definitely doesn't want this. Blue red, like if you play Goldspan Dragon attack and then play Time Walk, it's okay. But like the thing you for this to be good, you need to have a deck that wants to have like a pressure, but also is like making more mana past 5 mana, and that's pretty rare. Like it doesn't pressure that well, and it doesn't make mana that well. So it's only good if both abilities are really helpful, and that's just a pretty rare deck. Like I said, like blue red tempo decks, you like attack and then hold it counter spell. Like that's the one case where it's good. But even then, it's like a lot of mana for that. It's like yeah, I don't know. I just don't think it's that good. But an Embercleave is also not amazing, but is better, I think. Especially with like the addition of P and Kieran Lar and Seasoned Pyromancer, Rabble Master. There's lots of ways to make tokens and go wide. So slight miss on this one, unless you just love dragons. which fair enough. Then take this first and lose your games, but with a smile on your face. Next, Goblin Bombardment cut for Bitter Reunion. I'll give this one a B. Bombardment was not that good. It's like it was good in some very specific situations, but I think Bitter Reunion is more interesting. It's another pull to black. I think Black Red Reanimator is a cool archetype. The haste thing is also interesting. This is not good in mono red decks, but I think I like this exchange. Finally, for the red cards, Young Pyromancer cut for Scrapwork Mutt, which actually isn't red, but great change. B plus. Young Pyromancer is pretty bad, and Scrapwork Mutt is cool. It's another reanimate enabler for Black Red Reanimator. Also, just like a solid card in mono red that can um, just like smooth your draw. The Unearth is nice, and if you have no cards in your hand, this represents card advantage. So solid card. Moving on to green, we cut Satyr Wayfinder for Delighted Halfling. I don't know why some of these pictures come up and some don't, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. Look up this card if you need to. Um, this is an upgrade, I get. Yeah, I'll give this like a B. Satyr Wayfinder was cool with Uro specifically, but is pretty bad overall. And Delighted Halfling is good. Just like one mana dorks are always going to be good, and the uncounterable thing is relevant. I think control decks kind of like blue white control just always beats mono green because you have like board sweepers to kill their mana dorks and counter spells to hit their big threats. So like getting your planeswalkers to be uncounterable can give you some counterplay there. Next we have Eureka, um, which was cut. 4 mana, put everything into play for Invasion of Icaro. What is going on? I'm gonna refresh this page and see if that makes the cards actually load. All right, we're in the green cards. Nice. So this card's kind of complicated, but basically it's like extra mana for Green Sun Zenith on the front side, and then if you attack it a lot, it becomes a huge creature. I'll give this a B. Eureka was bad. It was like an okay sideboard card against mono red. Invasion of Ikora or Korea flip on the battle side, but it's okay. If you need just like more tutors, it's fine, but not a super exciting change. B. Springbloom Druid for Deep Root Wayfinder. Oh no. All right. Well, this card's bad, so I'm okay with cutting this. It's decent fixing for a 5 color deck, but the problem is you need to have a bunch of basics in your deck for that, and if you're playing 5 color, you're ideally not playing many basics. Deep Root Wayfinder is kind of weak, but it's cool. The problem is you kind of want to deal damage to creature to players with a green creature. You need to have removal to clear the path. So it's like okay in red green. It's like a worse Ragavan, but there we go. So I think I'll give this a C plus. I don't think Wayfinder is going to be in the format for too long, but Springbloom Druid is worse, so it's decent. Next Toski for Asika's Chariot. B minus, decent upgrade. Toski is like very slow and pretty easy to brick, but it is good in some situations. It like is specifically good against control decks that are just relying on only counter spells and removal, since it can't be countered and it's indestructible. But it's very bad against creatures. Asika's Chariot does a lot more board presence and is just a good card. Next, Vorinclex for Thrun, Breaker of Silence. I'm gonna give this one a D. I think Vorinclex is cool. Like searching for 2 forests is actually super relevant. Thrun is like just a big dumb creature that's hard to interact with. It's okay against control, but like I think Vorinclex is more interesting and probably also more powerful. So I prefer the Vorinclex here. Next, we have Whisperwood Elemental for Elder Gargaroth. I'll give this like a C. It really just depends. Gargaroth is much worse against removal, but better if they don't kill it, and that is like that introduces some level of suspense, which is nice. Um, yeah, hard to evaluate this. I'll just give it a C, maybe C plus. They're both big dumb green creatures that are like gonna wreck mono red and be very clunky against most other decks. So neutral. Worldly Tutor for Field of the Dead, great exchange. In terms of power level, A minus. In terms of fun, A plus. I love Field of the Dead decks. It incentivizes you for playing all the fun lands. It makes all the land synergies like Knight of the Reliquary and Golos much better. And Worldly Tutor was pretty bad. You could like play this to get your fellows on turn 2 more consistently, but they still kill it. Yeah, good exchange for sure. Next, Time of Need for Life from the Loam. This is another tutor that's just pretty bad. Excuse me. Life of the Loam is also not great. I'll give this a C plus. Loam is kind of interesting with like exploration plus strip mine. Um, Maybe it deserves a B actually. It's not that powerful, but it's fun. It's an interesting build around, and it's replacing something that was quite weak. Next we have Plow Under for Nissa Ascended Animist. Good exchange. Plow Under was past its prime. This card was kind of weak. It was an okay sideboard card against like High Tide Storm, but I like this exchange. Nissa's sweet. You can't see its text here, but it can like kill artifacts or enchantments every turn, make big creatures. It's like redundancy for the Crater Hoof Behemoth effect. Um, and then I also like the completed mechanic that lets you have the flexibility on paying 5, 6, or 7 mana for it. So just a powerful card. I'll give this like a B plus. Um, this is like more interesting and more powerful. Next, Terrastodon for Worldspine Worm. I'm gonna give this one a D. I think Terrastodon is cool. Worldspine Worm is like a 15/15. Like you can sneak attack it into play. Like it's fine, but I think Terrastodon is a lot more interesting. It's interactive. Green already has a bunch of big dumb creatures. We want more interactive cards, and Terrastodon is more interactive. Um, they're like it's also better in Reanimator. I just think it's like yeah, slight miss on this one. Maybe I'm wrong, and Worldspine Worm will have more applications than I think. But next, Primal Command for Titania, great addition. A minus maybe. Um, it's like Primal Command was super slow. It was moderately playable in some decks, but never you were never thrilled to play it. You basically like in my green decks, I want to have either like a super high creature count for like Natural Order and Gaia's Cradle, or lots of Planeswalkers to have ways to beat board sweepers. Primal Command was just never a card I was thrilled about. Titania, on the other hand, is sweet. Puts tons of power into the board. Rebuy, Strip Mine, or Wasteland. Um, like some niche synergies with like balance. It's just a cool card. Next, Tooth and Nail cut for Titan of Industry. I'm gonna give this one a D plus, maybe C minus. I like Tooth and Nail. It gives you like a lot of flexibility. It can find your Crater Hoof Behemoth. Just a cool card. And Titan of Industry is like it's also a cool card. It's fun. It gives you a lot of choices, which I like. Um, it's a decent reanimation target, decent ramp target, but like I just it's like a it's one of the more it's one of the more interesting fatties, I guess. But Tooth and Nail, I still like a little bit more. Um, but C minus, it's not a terrible exchange. Next, Heartbeat of Spring for Call of the Ring. That's weird that they cut a green card for a black card. Um, Both are pretty much unplayable. I'll give this a C plus. Heartbeat of Spring is better in like blue green high tide. That's not really a deck. Call of the Ring is okay in some like black aggressive decks that want value. And I do think the Ring Bearer is a cool mechanic. I don't think it's that good, but I think it's interesting. So C plus, but this is not a very good card. Um, Court of Bounty for Exploration. I guess I'll give this a C. I like Court of Bounty actually. It was a really, really powerful card against control decks. Um, and I think the Monarch, I like the Monarch as a mechanic. Once again, like incentivizing creatures and attacking and blocking is good. Um, but exploration is cool too. I like having redundancy for just playing extra lands. It's good with life from the loam. So see, like it's kind of hard to compare. They're very different cards that enable different decks, but maybe C plus. Exploration is cool. And then finally, the last green card, Pattern of Rebirth for Oldenwald Oddity. They're just adding a bunch of 4/4s with haste for 4 mana, which is fine. I mean, that's a powerful creature. Pattern of Rebirth sucked. One game I used it to get something good into play. Like I put like Archon of Cruelty into play in my like green black reanimator deck. But I'll give this like a C plus or B minus maybe. This is like not that cool of a card. It's very simple. It's kind of powerful, but not that powerful. It's like good in like beat down decks, and generally green decks aren't trying to beat down that much. But because what it was cut replacing was pretty bad, like slight upgrade. I have to feel like there's a better green creature though. Like maybe just leave in Terrast or either like Terrastodon or Tooth and Nail and just don't play this. Like this is just worse than Questing Beast, but whatever. Fine change. Next, Spell Queller for Urza Lord Protector. I think this is a huge miss. Not the Spell Queller is amazing, but this card just sucks. It on its own, it's totally bad. Like a 2/4 for 3 that like makes your stuff cost less. This is like worse than Goblin Electromancer. And then like even if this ability, I don't even know what this transfers into, frankly. But I don't care if it was 7 mana. Like if you control both of these things, you win the game. I still think it's not good. Like it's you need just so much to go right. You have your 3 mana creature that does nothing, your 5 mana artifact that doesn't do that much. You pay 7 mana at sorcery speed. I don't even care what Urza the Lord Urza Planeswalker does. It's fun if you like. There's those Johnnies out there that just like want to do the combo and like good for you. I guess I'm happy that it's in the format for one iteration just so people that are like that can have their fun. But it's totally unplayable. There's no deck where this is like a good card to play. I would just play like lands over these two cards usually. Maybe I'm missing the mark on this. I haven't tried to build it around it yet, but it's just like yeah, it is. I think this is pretty weak. And Spellquiller was a cool card. I like this card. It's good with the fairy. So yeah, I'll give this like a D minus, maybe even F. Honestly, it's like F for power level and gameplay, but like B plus for like wacky combo-y stuff. So if that's your thing, go for it. But like, I tend to play this like trying to win, and from that perspective, F, D minus maybe. Next, Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas for Ertai Resurrected. I love both of these cards. Ertai is much more versatile. I'll give this a B. I really think this card is powerful and interesting and fun. Um, so great addition. I just wish that we could still have Tezzeret because I think Tezzeret's cool too. But you do. It's like a little bit of a trap. You need lots of artifacts to make it work. It also just feel vintage QB, like making your Soul Ring into a 5/5. Um, but Airtie is a really cool card, so I'll still give this like a B plus, or sorry, like a C plus, B minus. This is like an A addition. This is a B subtraction, so that averages out to like slightly above average. Dreadbore is cut for Blood Tithe Harvester. Uh, I'll give this a C. Dreadbore is more powerful, I think. 2 mana to kill their Elspeth, Sun's Champion, is really nice. But Blood Tithe Harvester is cool. It is another pull towards Black Red Reanimator, and it's also like a decent aggressive card. Smooths your draw. It just does a lot of things. Um, so yeah, it's kind of neutral change. I guess I'll give it a C minus because I do like Dreadbore a lot. But this is it's more interesting and not that much less powerful. So it depends on how you prioritize it. Maybe it's a C plus. Next we cut Valky, God of Lies for Croxa. This is a great addition. A minus. I think Croxa is super fun and powerful, and again, I think the escape mechanic is just a good mechanic. You're cutting Woe Strider, so replacing it with another escape card is good. It's a pull towards Jund, which I like, and Valky was just bad. Like both sides were bad. There was no ways to abuse this really, um, like with Bring to Light and Modern. So good change. Next, Mayhem Devil for Fire Covenant. Great change. A. Mayhem Devil is just bad. The Sacrifice deck was bad. It's not even that good in the Sacrifice deck. Fire Covenant's sweet. It's super powerful, super interesting, leads to huge swings. Um, just a really cool card. It's a little bit too good maybe in some matchups, like against mono green, just 3 mana, instant speed, sweep their board. But the life loss is a real relevant thing against like aggressive decks, so that makes it like where it's almost too good against mono green, but against mono red and mono white, it's like very powerful, but the life loss is a real risk that you have to balance. So just a well designed card that's appropriate power level for Vintage Cube. Next, Xenaghost, God of Revels for Dragon Lord Atarka. I'll give this a B. Atarka's not super good, but Xenaghost was terrible, so B. You can play this in your mono green decks if you're splashing red and you need some removal. You can also play it if you didn't get the better reanimation targets. It's a fine card. Next, Eladamir's Call for Voice of Resurgence. It's kind of interesting. Based on power level, I'm here for it. Voice of Resurgence is really good, but it doesn't really fit into any decks. Like green white just still doesn't have that much of an identity in this format, which is something that they need to work on. I think they really buffed red white. We'll get to that in a little bit. But green white is just the worst color combination in Vintage Cube. Like the white ethos is like aggressive creatures, and the green ethos is ramp, and those two things don't go together at all. You can like splash white removal spells in your mono green deck just to have more interaction, and that's fine. But Voice of Resurgence just like wants to be in some sort of beatdown deck that isn't really supported. Maybe with the addition of Ulvenwald Oddity, like just green white aggro is going to be okay, and that's just a deck that I'm sleeping on. But I wish this card was good because I think that it would be fun if green white creature aggro was good. But I just don't think that's a good archetype. Meanwhile, Eldummer's Call is kind of bad, but it is better than they cut two other green creature tutors. Eldummer's Call is better than those ones. Um, and it like is actually good in mono in like if you're playing the mono green deck splashing white for removal, Eldammer's Call is really good in that deck. So I'll give this one a C minus. But I wish I liked it because I wish Voice of Resurgence was a good card in the format. Next, Mirari's Wake for Sigarda, Font of Blessings. This is a weird one. Mirari's Wake was terrible, and I'm happy they cut it. But Sigarda is just totally unplayable. There's like not enough angels or humans to make this static ability super good. Again, maybe I'm underestimating it. I haven't played with it yet. Um, but this card just seems pretty unplayable. It's just, I guess I'll give this a B minus because maybe this is good and Mirari's Wake was just not. Um, but it feels like there's got to be better green white stuff out there. Like I'd honestly rather Advent of the Worm. Uh, yeah, I don't know. 4 mana, instant speed, make a 5/5 with trample. Like that's kind of cool. It makes you like it works with like the creature token things with Asika's Chariot. Sigarda just doesn't seem good. Next, Goblin Electromancer from Magma Opus. Both are pretty much unplayable in most decks. I'll give this a B minus because this has some interesting combo potentials with like Torrential Gear Hulk, but it's really bad. It's like 2 mana to make a treasure is not good value, and 8 mana for this is like not. It does just doesn't do enough. Like killing some stuff, making a 4/4 and drawing two is good, but I've beaten this before and instant. So like it's just so much worse than like Sphinx's Rev for 5, and Sphinx. I don't know. Hopefully I'm wrong and Magma Opus is actually sweet, but I don't think it's that good. Next, Deathrite Shaman for Assassin's Trophy. Based on power level, this is probably an upgrade, but Deathrite Shaman is more fun. It's just like does so much and it incentivizes fetch lands and cool stuff. I'm gonna give this like a C minus, I guess. Based on power level, it's probably C plus, but Deathrite Shaman is so cool and really good when it's good. Um, it's fine. Next, we're cutting Maelstrom Pulse for Terra Sunder. I'll give this a B minus, I guess. They're both they're similar, but Terra Sunder is like I like that it's instant speed. I like that it presents you with options. I will miss being able to kill a bunch of tokens with this. Um, and this also is just kind of an iconic card. Maybe I just think that because it came out right before I started playing. But yeah, Terra Sunder is probably a little bit better, but I will miss Maelstrom Pulse, like C plus. Next, we have Lightning Helix for fourth Aerolingus. I love this exchange. Lightning Helix is fine, but like it's good if you're playing Jeskai Control, and it's not like you're never gonna splash for this card. Fourth Aerlingus is really good. Honestly, almost too good. Like I've seen this card win some games that it feels like nothing should be able to win. But it pressures. It's like in the late game, it just wins the game because you put like 16 power onto the board with trample and haste, and then you can just play it as 3 mana to become the monarch a lot of games, and then everywhere in the middle too, it's pretty good. So like a cool monarch card that generates a lot of board presence and can kill planeswalkers, just like a really strong card. Then Wear Tear Cut for Zerta the Dawn Waker. At first, I was confused by this, but then I realized like it's actually not that unreasonable to have this as a companion. There's lots of permanents with activated abilities in this format, and that's just cool. It's like an interesting deck building restriction that has some payoff, but not too much. The card itself is basically just a 3/3 for 3, but getting a free 3/3 for 3, um, is cool, and it's an interesting deck building restriction. So I like this exchange. I'll give it a B. It's not super powerful, but it's fun, and it's not weak. Next, Nahiri for Othari. Not sure how to pronounce this. Nahiri was cool. I like this card. I think it was a little underrated. Excuse me. It gave some redundancy to sneak attack while also being interactive and just a solid card. I like playing Jeskai with this and like Inferno Titan. Um, but Otari is really good. Like ridiculously good, honestly. Like it comes in and hits for 5 immediately and gains 3. And then next turn it hits for what? For 9 and just like scales up really quickly and comes back from the graveyard. It's like terrible against Lightning Bolt. If they just bolt it before you attack, you trade 5 mana for 1 mana. But that actually I think is kind of fun. Like that introduces suspense and intrigue, and so yeah, I like this change. I'll give it a B plus. Um, yeah, I like Nahiri, but yeah, and so this is what I'm saying. Like Boros got such a buff for these three cards. It's great. Green White needs a similar buff. They like made some changes, but the additions for Green White are just worse. All right, next we're getting into the Simic cards. Edric was cut for Kinnan. Um, I'm gonna give this a C minus. I think Kinnan is pretty weak. It's okay if you have tons of mana dorks. It can make you make a bunch of mana sometimes. Edric is good against control, but like not amazing. Like both these cards are kind of weak. I would rather have Hydroid Krasis than Kinnan personally, but we'll see. Kinnan is kind of interesting. Maybe it's a C plus. Edric was a little weak. Then Hydroid Krasis for Sail into the West. I actually really like the Krasis. I think the cast trigger was a good way to get around counter magic. Um, just a solid card. Also cool flavor. Havoc is a small price to pay for data. As someone who likes both data and Havoc, I approve of that. Um, but Sail into the West is interesting. It's basically 4 mana instant speed draw 7. Um, it's interesting if you're playing it with like in Sultai with like Orcish Bowmasters, Shieldred, stuff like that. Um, it's also the only instant speed draw 7 that I think is in the format. Um, Not super powerful, but cool and I don't know, feels fun. So yeah, okay, upgrade. I guess I'll give this like a C plus. Based on power level, I think it's maybe a downgrade or at least not much of an upgrade. But this introduces a lot of interesting play patterns, so I'm here for it. Next, Coma got the axe for Tamio, Collector of Tales. Coma was bad. It was like an okay reanimation target. Um, Not amazing. Tamio is weird. Like the +1 is not nearly as good in a format with all one ofs. The -3 is good, but like 4 mana for a regrowth is overcosted for sure. This is very good with Uro, and it's good if you have like I had one deck that had Jace the Mind Sculptor and this, and that was really sweet. You like brainstorm and then put a card on top and then name that card, and so every turn you get to like mill the card you don't want and draw a card that you do. Um, that was cool. It also plays similarly with like preordained ponder, any library manipulation. But it doesn't impact the board at all. I think it's not that good. So I'll give this like a B minus because Como was bad. But Tamio, like, I mean, I've won with it. I think it's a fun card, but it's kind of weak in most circumstances. Next, Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh. Very expensive Planeswalker. They cut it for Cruel Ultimatum. I like this change. Nicol Bolas is cool, but they cut Arena Rector, which makes having big Planeswalkers less important. Cruel Ultimatum is really powerful and really iconic. Um, it's hard to cast, of course, but and I haven't done it yet. But I would love to play like just like Grixis Control with Cruel Ultimatum as a win condition. Then for the last multicolored card, Niv Mizzet got the axe for Inspired Ultimatum. I'm gonna give this one a D minus. Inspired Ultimatum is good. Similar to Cruel Ultimatum, like it will usually win the game if you're playing Jeskai and you get to cast it, but it's not as good. It's also not as iconic. And Niv Mizzet is just awesome. I love this card. Based on power level, it's still probably a slight downgrade, but it's close. But then this is just like have the build around. It only costs 1 slot. You can play 5 color without Niv Mizzet, of course, but I just love this card. I think it introduces very cool deck building restrictions. Some of my favorite drafts I've ever done have been like taking an early like fetch landed in a Triome and a Golos and a Niv, and then just like going crazy. And I'm gonna miss that a lot. So I'm very sad about this change. Even though from power level it's probably fine. All right, moving on to the artifacts and getting towards the end. This may be a long video. I don't know. My throat's a little sore, but it's fun to talk about. Inkwell Leviathan for Triplicate Titan. I like this change a little bit. I'll give it a B minus. Inkwell was kind of bad. It's like a good tinker target sometimes, um, but very hard to interact with, which is I guess the point of it. But Triplicate Titan I think is more interesting. It's like bigger, badder Wormcoil engine. It's bad against exile based removal, but it's just a huge creature that's powerful and cool, and I like this card. Um, I had a blue black Tinker deck recently where I would like Tinker in a Triplicate Titan and then I hold up Snuff Out, and if they tried to path to exile your thing, you Snuff Out in response and then create 9 more power. Um, just a cool card, yeah. B. Next, Metalworker for Crystalline Giant. This is a kind of weird one. I like Metalworker. It's not great, but it like shines in some decks. If you have like turn one, Mishra's Workshop, Metalworker, turn two, like just go off. I like having access to that sort of deck. Um, it is fragile, and if you just tap out for it on turn three, it's pretty weak. But Crystalline Giant's a weird one because it doesn't have a clear home. I guess its home would be like mono white or mono red, where you want just like beefy creatures, and this card can pretty quickly become like a 6/6 with flying, lifelink, and death touch or something. Like so, I haven't played with it yet. I've played against it once, and it didn't do too much, but it's a cool card. I guess I'll give this change a C plus. Like I'm sad that the artifact archetype is getting a bit of a nerf, but this is a cool card that I'm excited to see how it plays. I could also imagine it being like really good, and I'm just underrating it. Like it will be a 5/5 with two keywords on turn four. Um, like that's interesting. Like maybe it's good. Um, oh wait. Oh no, this is worse than I thought it was. I thought it got +1/+1 and a keyword. Okay, no, it just gets one of them. Um, Still decent, but now worse. Now I'm getting this a C minus. Maybe this card's still good. Like a 4/4 with all of these keywords is a good card. But like I thought it grew every turn, which would make it like actually very good. All right, Lodestone Golem for Mystic Forge. Lodestone Golem was definitely past its prime. This is another hit to the Mishra's Workshop decks. Although maybe Mystic Forge is better. Like this card is it's tricky. You really need to build around this. A 4 mana artifact that does not impact the board has to be very, very good. And but like if you have tons of artifacts, it can get there. I guess I'll give this change a C plus. I don't think Mystic Forge is gonna be good usually, but I bet one time this season someone's gonna have like the best Mystic Forge deck ever, and it's gonna look great and good for that person. So C plus. Now one that's weird. Karn Liberated is gone for Portal to Phyrexia. I miss Karn. Karn was my first ever Planeswalker, my first ever Mythic Rare, I think. So I have a personal connection to this card, and like people hate it, or used to hate it at least in Mono Green, Tron, and Modern, because like turn three Karn, take out your land, game ends. But like I was trying to play this to restart the game, and that's like pure and just I don't know. I will miss this card a lot. Maybe that's more nostalgia than anything else. Portal to Phyrexia is good. It's a good tinker target, but based on power level, I'll give this like a C. Slight upgrade, maybe, so C plus. Based on my preferences, D minus, because I love Karn and I think this card's fine. Um, yeah, I'll miss you, Karn. Lotus Bloom out for Mocked Opal. Solid upgrade here. Lotus Bloom was not that good. In like very specific Storm decks, it was. But I think Mocked Opal is more powerful and more interesting to build around. Um, it's very good in like in Supreme Draft. The better your deck is, the better this card is. I'll give this a B. Not like a massive upgrade, but a cool upgrade. Next, we have Winter Orb for Pented Prism. I'll give this a B. Winter Orb was pretty bad. It was good with specifically Urza, but and it did like it changes the game in a kind of interesting way. But so it's like I kind of liked playing with it in play. Weirdly, I know some people hate it, but I think it's kind of interesting. But it's just weak. It's not that good of a card. Pented Prism is also not that good of a card, but it does like enable some busted things. Lets you just like turn one land mocks Pented Prism, turn two 5 drop is powerful, and we'll see. I don't think Pented Prism will last for long, but it's a fine card. Next, we have Oblivion Stone for the One Ring, which is great. I love the One Ring. It's a perfect card for Vintage Cube. It's like the drawback is worse when it's not a four of because it's like you can Legend Rule it away in Modern and not take too much damage. But the drawback is worse in Vintage Cube. But it's just great. It's powerful. It's interesting, fun to me at least. Presents real like considerations about deck building. I did play one deck that had the One Ring plus Phyrexian Metamorph, and that was a way to reset it. And of course, there's like Teferi can bounce it and whatnot. But I like this change a lot. Oblivion Stone was fine, but not that good. There was no deck that it was a natural fit in, really. So I'll give this like an A minus. Next, Sword of Feast and Famine, cut for Anduril, Flame of the West. C. Sword of Feast and Famine is more interesting to me. It has like it's very good when it's good, um, but it's like I mean you need a lot to go right. This needs to you need to actually connect, and this you just need to attack. The payoff is less, but it's decent. The legendary thing is like a cool additional thing too. If you do put it on a legend, it adds 5 power. It's reasonable. Um, so yeah, maybe C plus. They're similar. This is probably a little bit like the floor is definitely a lot higher on this. Next, Worn Power Stone, cover Foundry Inspector. I'm gonna give this a D. Maybe this card's better than I'm giving it credit for, but Worn Power Stone is actually good. Like, there's this artifact deck that I feel like I used to love, and they cut a lot of the key cards for it, and Worn Power Stone is one of them. It's not great, but it's solid. And Foundry Inspector is just like pretty mid. So D. Not I'm not like sad to see Worn Power Stone go really, but Foundry Inspector feels weak. Next, Coercive Portal, cut for Palantir of Orthanc. I like this change. Palantir is presents you with a lot more interesting decisions. I'll give it a B. Um, yeah, I mean, not too much to say here. Like, you can go crazy with milling, like Emrakul, and sometimes it'll be like a combo card, but basically, this is just like a 3 mana rock that just like generates some value on your end step, like scrying and drawing cards. Um, I like having access to some number of this sort of effect, and this is a more interesting one than Course of Portal, so B. Next, Timeless Lotus for the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. Timeless Lotus was unplayable, so is Might Stone and Weak Stone. This is probably slightly better, um, but it's still really bad. Um, it's there for the combo with Urza, but Urza is just so weak. Like, this card is better than Urza. It actually does stuff on its own, but it's still just not good. I guess I'll give this change like a C because we cut a bad card for a bad card. But this is not a card that is Vintage Cube power level. Next, we have or well, these are all kind of the same. The signets for the talismans. I've heard a lot of people asking questions about this. My short answer is that it doesn't matter. Like they're very similar. The slightly longer answer is I think this is a slight downgrade. The upside is that you can use it immediately, so you can go like on turn 2, Talisman of Creativity into Preordain, and you can't do that with signets. But I think signets are like more interesting. It is a little bit weaker, maybe. Like there's definitely situations where needing to have a mana upfront to get your mana payoff is bad. But I think it's really good for like adding lots of colors and splashing colors and whatnot. So if you have like Golos in your deck, you could play like a primarily Jeskai deck, but then you have like one green black Talis or Signet and use that to use Golos. And the talismans don't do that. The one life is it is what it is. I think it's fine. Slight downgrade, I guess. Um, so overall, I'll give this like a C minus. I don't really know why they made this change. Like, I feel like the Signets were beloved. I think they just wanted to get over 100 changes. Um, yeah, I'd say a slight downgrade, but I don't care too much. They're similar. I do feel like I see these going late more, so I don't know if that's because people think they're worse than Signets or because people realize Signets might have been a little bit overrated back in the day. Um, but yeah, it's fine. I will say I wish that Zerda, the companion that makes your activated abilities cost 1 less, it doesn't work for mana abilities, but I wish it did. If that could make all the Signets just tap for 2, that'd be a really cool synergy. But yeah, fine change. I don't have strong feelings, but slightly worse in my opinion. All right, last few changes are cutting. Well, I guess all right. So, well, Underground River for Creeping Tar Pit, great upgrade. Underground River, like Tar Pit's great. It's fun. It's powerful. I love Manlands. I'll give this like an A. Honestly, like it's not a huge power level increase, but yeah, I just think it's way more interesting and a slight power level increase. And Sulphur Springs for Graven Cairns, it's fine. Um, I'm just gonna give this a C. Honestly, Graven Cairns is maybe worse. It's good if you have like very restrictive mana base. Like if you want to play like Doughty Voidwalker and like Kiki Jiki in your same deck for some reason. I guess it's a C plus. Pretty neutral. Another A here. Manlands are great. I love Raging Ravine, especially in Jund. And then finally, Rishadan Port for Mana Confluence. I think Port's actually pretty good. It's not amazing, but I always liked playing it in mono white in particular. I'm gonna give that one a D. Mana Confluence is good, but like you don't really want Mana Confluence to be your fixing for your 5 color deck. You want it to be just fetches and shocks. Um, maybe it should be like a D plus, but yeah, I think this. I'm a little bit sad about this one. All right, so that's a lot of changes. Mostly good. Like I'd say B is probably the average rating of all these changes. Um, but now we'll go into some of the what I think of some of the best and the worst. And of course, I said all these ratings. You might be able to get me and be like, you actually said this was an A and this was an A minus. It's an art, not a science, okay? But generally, cards that I'm happy about and sad about to add. So the card that I'm most sad about cutting is Niv Mizzet. Um, I think Niv Mizzet's just so much fun. It's like pretty powerful. Inspired Ultimatum is not that good of an addition. So this is the card that I'm most sad to see go. Um, just a sweet card, and there's just no reason to cut it. I don't think Inspired Ultimatum is that cool. And then next, the Urza and the Mightstone Meekstone, or Mightstone and Weakstone. I don't know what 5 mana artifact I would want in this slot, but this is just not that powerful. I think it's a trap. Again, if you want to just like build around it and get your like sweet value, fair enough. But like, it's just not that good. Let's see where the Urza is. My patience for finding Urza is gone. But oh, here 2/4. Like, yeah. Those are the three cards that the three changes that I support the least. The addition of this over Spell Queller, the addition of Inspired Ultimatum over Niv Mizzet, and then the I mean the thing for the Mightstone one is that I don't really care about Timeless Lotus, but I don't think this is a good exchange. I put in another 5 mana artifact. There's a lot. Now on to the best ones. This one's hard because there's a bunch of changes that I really like. Um, I made a list here. Do I want to revise this list at all? Well, oh wait. The other change that I don't approve of is cutting the Karn. Um, yeah, this change I also disapprove of, but that's more of a sentimental thing than anything else. As for the changes that I like, there was a lot. I think they definitely upgraded the format overall. I'll go through the ones I listed. So honorable mentions, then I'll go through the ones I listed on my notes. First honorable mention, fourth Aer Lingus. This card's cool, powerful, build around somewhat, splashable. Just a good addition. Feels vintage QB. Um, I also really like the addition of the Manlands. In terms of how much I'm happy about it, this is maybe at the top of the list. In terms of power level, not that high, but still good. Um, and then, um, yeah, so those are my two honorable mentions. And then as for the five changes that I like the most. First, Leyline Binding. I think that's cool. It's fun. It's powerful. It introduces cool deck building restrictions. Seal from Resistance wasn't that good. This is a change I'm very happy about. Um, it's slightly worse for specifically mono white, but for any multicolor deck, this is a great upgrade and another incentive to play multicolor. Next, we'll go to Fire Covenant. I think Fire Covenant's sweet. I mean, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's like very powerful and interesting. Gives you cool deck building or like cool trade offs. Like how much life are you willing to pay? Um, the downside is it might be too good in some situations, but really cool card. So this is the next one. Next, I'm gonna go to a land, which is Field of the Dead. I don't know where it is. Is it under? Oh, wait. I thought Field of the Dead was an addition, but they put it under green. That's kind of funny. Um, but yeah, this is a great addition. Field of the Dead is another one of these build arounds for 5 color decks. Um, Maybe it's even better than Niv Mizzet as a build around. It just generates so much value passively over the course of the long game, and it's even better if you have like fetch lands or Titania or things like that. It's just like a cool build around, powerful, incentivizes you to draft sweet lands. Just a really solid addition. Next, we're gonna go to Dragon's Rage Chandler, really powerful card. Um, Bloodfeather Phoenix was bad. Dragon's Rage Chandler is good. Just a solid upgrade, interesting card, fun to play with, and just has that vintage cube feel. And then finally, for the best edition, Orcish Bowmasters. I love this card. I think it's powerful. Blood Artist was not good. This gives such a buff to like black creature decks and black control decks. The punishing card draw is interesting. I also had a Grixis deck where I would play Orcish Bowmasters and then Dak Faden targeting them, which was sweet. This actually makes it way more likely that you'll lose Ancestral Recall targeting your opponent too. Um, just interesting play, powerful, punishes broken decks. Just a really strong card. I think it's well designed for Vintage Cube at least. Maybe it's too powerful for Standard or Modern. But really, really sweet card, and I'm happy it's in the format. And overall, good changes, Wizards. I think you did a good job. There's a few misses, but more or less, I'm on board with these changes, and I'm happy that Vintage Cube is even better than ever. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.